Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons, and Thursday morning at like midnight, Sony Pictures released the latest trailer for Danny Boyle and Alex Garland's finest, 28 Years Later, starring Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and Ralph Fiennes. Trifecta. Who would have thought? The world has not returned to normal yet, and we focus on one group of survivors on a small island, heavily protected. And when one group leaves this island on a mission, they discover wonders and horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but other survivors as well. So this movie feels like a heavier upgrade from 28 Weeks Later, where we began studying the rage virus and followed a small group of survivors escaping an outbreak in their district. Though this continues to chip away at what made me really love 28 Days Later. It explores human nature, isolation, and around-the-clock constant fear, suspense, and great music. So with all that, let's take a look at this trailer scene by scene and find all those details you might have missed and explore some new things as well. But first, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes launching your own website a breeze. We opened the trailer with these NATO soldiers searching a tunnel, and I really love this shot. The darkness, seeing each other like silhouettes, and this perfect circle stage light on their boots. Gimme. One of the soldiers is Erik Sundquist, played by young Royals Edvin Riding, who, spoilers, so sorry, it's in the trailer, definitely doesn't make it to the end of the movie. I also think it's his head that's on the poster. All of a sudden, the soldiers are ambushed by this Jack zombie, and he has red eyes. He's full of that rage virus. To be fair, in the past movies, we saw people change immediately, so this could be just a Jack man that just turned, but since the entire movie's problem is the virus evolving, in comparison with a lot of the scenes that we've seen with this guy in both trailers, I think it's not hard to believe that perhaps the virus has evolved to make them smarter, more rage-filled, and tactically just better fighters, thus keeping them strong as hell like this guy. This could also explain why the dad in 28 Weeks Later was weirdly smart and retained what I assumed were fragments of his past that influenced some of his rage zombie-filled actions. As we know, viruses adjust and mutate to survive. The longer it circulates amongst the masses, the more it can change. They all mutate, but not all at the same rate. So I'm assuming the weaker zombies have starved off or just died, leaving the stronger ones, or those carrying the dominant strain, alive and thriving. Additionally, MMA fighter Chi Lewis Perry is credited on the 28 Years Later IMDb page. While it's still uncertain if this is him, that man stands at the same height as LeBron James, 6'9", and is super jacked, so I feel like we got our guy right now. We get an overview of the small island vignette from the clouds, the holy island of Lindisfarne in England, located off the coast of Northumberland. In the next sequence, we get a shot from what I expect is their watchtower. They showed it in the last teaser trailer, their roles in their community, the final one being that of the watchtower. So there's the hunters, farmers, gatherers, and a counselor, who I assume keeps tabs on everyone in the community and their different job groupings to make sure everything stays in order, sort of like a mayor, if you will, seamsters, and then the watchtowers who protect and monitor around the clock. Now, from the point of view of the watchtower, you can see the causeway is underwater, and this is true to the actual area where it's cut off from the mainland twice a day during high tide, which will absolutely play a significant role in this movie. As we see later, Jamie and Spike are chased by a zombie on that causeway, slowing them down, but it also offers a great deal of safety for these survivors overall, being isolated from whatever cult made this bone shrine and the new super zombies. And yes, I know they're not technically zombies, but it's just easier to call them zombies in this kind of tense. I know later on I'll call them the infected. You might have noticed by now in the trailer they're only using arrows because they're smart. If there's anything I learned from the zombie survival guide, it's always to use arrows. You can retrieve arrows, but you can't go back for bullets. So in the watchtower, they use a stationary crossbow. As you might have already heard, the 1915 audio recording of Rudyard Kipling's poem Boots is beginning. We clearly just didn't get enough of this in the teaser trailer, and I'm honestly so happy they kept it in. I thought they would remove it for this full trailer, but here it is, and it's perfect. We also see this sort of scarecrow that looks like we're using it for target practice. It's also built on a cross and resembles this person in a mask. We also see them in the teaser trailer, but now in the background it says Holy Island something, and I assume this is just the new crest for their new commune. Like the island's real high tide, the Holy Island has religious significance and history that could also play into the story. I'm not saying the story will involve religious works favoring like Celtic Christianity, I'm just saying it's holy grounds to some, and in the future where a virus devoured the world, many people find hope and guidance in different ways. More often than not in these kind of movies and situations, in dangerous, scary, and restrictive ways. I think there's a chance that not every community is good and praises a different figure or value, and it probably links to this mask or symbol for them. We get this horrifying shot, honestly, a diabolical shot of bodies upon bodies lined up by this river, and they're burning the infected bodies. I think this is actually Ralph Fiennes' character, because IGN shared an exclusive behind the scene look with new clips that we haven't seen before, and we get a better look at this bald-headed man, and I think that's Ray Fiennes doing it. He could also be the one collecting the bones for the Bone Temple. I think he's working for someone else that's making the Bone Temple, but what if it's one man just doing it? Could you imagine? All day, all night, creating bone shrines. Then we get Dr. Kelson's narration.
There were so many dead, infected and non-infected alike.
Ray Fiennes plays Dr. Kelson if you couldn't hear his voice distinctively, and Fiennes spoke with Empire a little bit about his character, saying he's a survivor and the way he survived is very interesting. He's quite out there in his views of the world. He goes on to say, I think audiences will assume something about him and then see where it goes. And during an interview with IndieWire, our boy drops a major tea about his role and the movie overall, saying it centers around a young boy who wants to find a doctor to help his dying mother. He leads his mother through this beautiful northern English terrain, but of course, around them, hiding in forests and hills and woods, are the infected. But he finds a doctor who is a man we might think is going to be weird and odd, but actually is a force for good. This interview has already confirmed a couple things for me. One, Jodie Comer's Isla is the mother of Spike and the wife of Jamie. She's also sick, and they're embarking on this journey to save her. But it also tells a little bit about Ray Fiennes' blood-soaked character as well. He might be bad, but he also might be good. I think a bigger takeaway is how he has a different view of the world, which raises some concerns when the population is already dying off. Is this the kind of guy who believes there's a cure, yet he needs to dissect normal people to find it? Or is he the kind of guy who believes he needs to sacrifice people for a higher calling? You see what I'm saying right now? There's just too much room for error to have an eccentric guy travel with you in this kind of way. Later, it was also confirmed that he'd have a larger role in the next film, 28 years later, The Bone Temple, to which director Danny Boyle said he strides forward into the second film in an enormous way, where the question of what he's after and what he wants to do gets fully resolved. So whatever dastardly deed we see him working towards, no, he's gonna be doing it a bit into the second movie. Then we see snippets of what I assume are the beginning stages we didn't see when Jim was in a coma. The people running in the church and these people getting their home ransacked. This woman bent over screaming with red eyes, clearly infected, is the woman we saw in the teaser trailer, the aunt with all her littles watching the Teletubbies. So, you know, you might see a bunch of kids die in this movie. Never a good thing, but I just have to say it. We see these infected men crawling over the hills. These men we see later in the trailer breaking into the church here. And this is all to say, I think this entire sequence is all set during the initial outbreak, most likely on Holy Island. We see these crosses and rosaries, flames ignite in the foreground, so we believe they're burning the bodies of the infected. But later in the trailer, before the two boys embark on their journey, we see the crosses and the tin cans that people use for fires. At first, I assumed they use it as like lampposts at night while monitoring the barricade. But later in the trailer, you see that they're probably using it to set those arrows on fire. And as we know, fire works very well against the infected. Dr. Kelson said that there were so many dead, both uninfected and infected, which happens a lot in these kinds of movies. And 28 weeks later, NATO's mission was to contain it.
Step 1, kill the infected. Step 2, containment. If containment fails, step 3, extermination. Now they won't stop until everyone is dead.
They had to kill anyone and everyone on the ground who could move the virus. So you're gonna see normal bodies and infected bodies, but I assume with all the craziness humanity has found themselves in by now, there's also, you know, people killing just regular people. If the fact that it's April already is making you feel like you need to get a 2025 accomplishment under your belt, here's an easy one for you. Use Squarespace to make yourself a website. It's easy, it's quick, and you'll walk away with a website so polished, everyone will assume you spent a year tinkering away at it. Squarespace is an all-in-one tool that gives you everything you need to make a website that looks good and does whatever you need it to do. If you're not a graphic designer, don't worry. Squarespace's design intelligence tool makes it so easy to get your website looking just right. It combines 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise with cutting-edge AI technology. Every Squarespace website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and more. So you show up more often to more people in a global search engine results. And with just a few clicks, Squarespace can help you untangle digital payment platforms, making it easy to start receiving payments right away using popular payment methods like Apple Pay, ACH, Direct Debit, Klarna, and more. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/newrockstars to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. In the village, there are murals of the people, and I started looking at every single person, comparing them to every single person in the portrait, and I was like, yeah, this woman's that person, and this guy's definitely that guy. And then I was like, I'm probably wrong, and this person is probably dead, and this is just a rest in peace mural. A lot of these people do look like the folks in town, but there's also a chance they're not. But in all, I do think they're meant to reflect the town folk in spirit regardless. During the murals and some other scenes at the bottom, there are these kinds of symbols, kind of like Morse coded like symbols to the narration. I went down a deep rabbit hole searching for this, and this is called Pigpen cipher, or Masonic cipher. It replaces letters with geometric symbols, often based on a grid or tic-tac-toe like pattern. So I looked it up, and there's a promotional site right now for rageleaks.net. If you type in the password, which translates from Pigpen cipher, it gives you memento mori, which translated from Latin means remember you must die or remember death. It then takes you to the top secret page. The page then reveals the number of years it has been at the top and asks what is really happening behind the blockade. The files have been authored by Anonymous, but have been viewed quite a bit. The two files we can't open are the Life on Patrol and the Cargo Drones one. This all feels super high security government type stuff, so I assume government or some other form of heavy organized group outside of the UK is monitoring and enforcing the quarantine still. When you click on the surveillance reports for the commune, it tells you the threat level, the location, and report disclosing Tidal Island provides increased security and long-range view of threats. Stable social order keeps community secure. 0 attempts at breaking quarantine. Insane! They're thriving, but this is still insane. The second piece of updated information is a message that you can pause to read fully because it's pretty long. I'll put it right here. Essentially, the world still doesn't know what's happening. We're all aware they're in a quarantine and this is to protect them. Still, they're all dying and they're also not allowed to communicate with other surviving communities. This is crazy. We then see Jenny and she says, you know, I feel he's a bit young. Then later she says, once you walk into the mainland, there's no rescues. In an interview with Empire, they mention those in the community have to occasionally leave the island, and on one of those trips, they take Spike for training, rites of passage. This must be that trip, which makes sense why Jenny's like, I don't know, he's very young. I also assume that this is the first trip he goes on. He gets chased by zombies, makes it home, and then on his second trip is to find aid for his ailing mother with his mother. We don't know who Jenny is right now, but just by the word of caution and reminder, she may be the counselor I spoke about earlier. We get this art drawing very quickly in the sequence, one with a naked man super veiny with arrows sticking out. The arrow points to it saying fast ones. I do think it was drawn by Spike after the first incident where the big zombie is chasing them over the causeway, but this also may confirm the different infections. We see the fast naked ones later in the trailer. Then we get another with these dead bodies around another menacing drawing. It looks less like a zombie and more like a leader, a grotesque leader at that. This may be Jack O'Connell's character that we'll get into a little bit later in the trailer. The drawings are also done on a torn sheet of pastry cookbook if you were wondering. They're using very old maps of Holy Island. This one specifically is published by William Bilal circa 1645, and we follow Jamie and Spike onto a beach shore, and I don't know if they're still on the Snook according to this map or moving towards Beale Point. I scanned so much footage of their shooting locations and couldn't find this exact beach that opens to that much vegetation. If you look close enough though, you can see the sort of flare and contrast off the waves and Spike, so someone's watching them travel. The audio is also similar to that of like an old carousel slide projector or like the shutter of an old camera, so someone is indeed monitoring their station.
Down again. Down.
They reach this abandoned house, and according to this person on Reddit, this is at an abandoned house in Durham, which is about 2 hours away from Holy Island. So if this is true, their in-world journey, they're like a day away from home. We then get a shot we've seen before, the two men hunting, and as you can see, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character has a wedding ring on his finger, just a flag. In this breakdown, he's married again to Jodie Comer's Isla. We see the boys in a giant field, and through these IGN clips, we actually have the audio unlike the other two trailers we've seen already. Here's the bit that I'm referring to.
Get back to the trees.
And this is very cool and very important thing to flag because they must stay hidden in the trees to avoid the infected. And in that same interview, Garland alludes to the fact that they might be hunting them like animals. They've adapted so much, they know how to hunt their prey better, so they're waiting Spike and Jamie out. We get this fantastic shot that I'm truly just obsessed with in the clouds. It's a different angle to the boys being chased by this big zombie, and I love it. We see the soldiers rushing off a little boat. I assume this scene is before they enter the tunnel area at the beginning, but the next shot is after, since no one is limping when they're rushed off the boat initially. We get a better look of this scene in the Empire article where they talk to Danny Boyle. It's also very clear that the soldiers get infected again, bringing us right back to the first movie. Nothing like a bunch of infected soldiers. As you can see, these are the NATO soldiers from their badge. Above their badge, you can see specifically these are Swedish NATO soldiers. So it's interesting to see them using Swedish NATO officers this go round instead of the US ones we used in 28 Weeks Later. So for those that don't know, NATO plays a big part in 28 Weeks Later and the real world. Normally they oversee a lot of military development stuff, but in 28 Weeks Later, it was American NATO forces helping to quarantine and protect mainland Britain. According to Boyle from an Empire article about 28 Weeks Later, they spoke about the UK and how it was ravaged by the virus and became a literal plague. Nothing is allowed in and nothing is allowed out. Britain has paused completely. The rest of the world is largely untouched by the virus and wants to keep it that way. So the infection hasn't even spread outside the UK yet, and it looks like NATO is still trying to help contain and restore civilization a bit. They compared this all to Brexit, so in a way, as my coworker Berg has mentioned, the rest of the world is kind of like, probably best if we don't interact with it. And I know that kind of throws a wrench into our whole ending with 28 Weeks Later, where we see the breakout in Paris. This has been brought up in that same Empire article, to which they said this is not a continuation of that story, but Garland says that that film and this film are not in conflict, though he does add that the term canon is not a very Danny Boyle word. In other words, this is where the spaces come in. Don't expect to have all dots neatly joined. Back to the trailer. To me, it looks like the soldiers happen upon a city or an area in ruins filled with the infected, and this is probably where they follow the last remaining soldiers out of the woods, which leads them to Spike and his mom later. We finally see Jodie Comer and Spike, mother and son, and they're running, they're taking off. As you can see, nothing's back to normal. This poor car has grown grass now. This location is the Happy Eater. It's a real chain restaurant in England and Wales. Then we get this super awesome shot of the infected entering the Happy Eater, which is full of smoke. And if you remember, this is a gas station. However, the smoke and the light from the drapes create this like great contrasting tone. Oh, the blue and purple haze. Chef kiss. I love this scene. At the top of the establishment, you can see one of the NATO officers climbing out like nothing's happening until the flame almost sets him ablaze. There's also another banger shot of Spike and Isla huddled behind the cabinets from the flames above. And I don't think they succumbed to the flames clearly, but Adam Pescott shared his storyboard art on Instagram detailing this shot, and it's very cool to see the idea behind it all. Then over a fire, bloody Dr. Kelson says there are many kinds of death. So we'll be seeing literal death, and I'm also sure we'll be seeing metaphorical deaths. Then this shot of a man drinking, being merry in front of the crest that says God send grace, and the sun is shining down through the clouds on the crest onto this cliff that's very similar to this shot of the infected on a cliff from the first teaser trailer. And remember, the house that tells us behold Jimmy, he is coming with the clouds. If this man represents Jimmy, could this commune be where Jimmy led and then eventually was expelled from? Or maybe he made a trip to the mainland and just never came back and became a heretic. We'll get back to Jimmy by the end of this trailer, I promise you, because I think he's closer than we think. The scene is connected to the one from the first trailer where Spike is carried to the front by a group of merry men. If you look to the left of the first trailer shot, there's a mask or a statue of a face making a similar O like the mask that we saw earlier. So I think these masks are a part of their commune's traditions or just rituals. What we don't know is whether they're good or bad yet. They are scary, so they're probably bad. Another banger shot in the red light, we see the infected with glowing red eyes. It's like 28 weeks later when they were looking with a night vision scope. Since night vision is usually green or white, I wonder if this is through the eyes of the infected, because they're also not that violent right now. However, to negate my own theory, I will add that during the tunnel scene with the soldiers, you can see that their scopes for their guns are red. So it could just be them looking through these like red night vision scopes. We get a close-up of this scene of the infected on the hillside. Keep in mind that while these three are twitching and being weird, this one up close is just walking like a regular person. And I think this is the infected that we saw at the beginning of the trailer. We get a great view of what I keep calling the Bone Temple, and I'm not sure if in fact this is called the Bone Temple. The sequel to the next movie has already been made or is currently in post-production, and it's 28 years later, the Bone Temple. And it's hard to not assume they're not talking about the Shrine of Bones right here in front of us. As you can see in this shot, the area is roped off and in use. It's not going uphill, but I think at the rocks at the bank, there's probably a river, and this is more like a bridge that they have to cross to get there. We get this guy, an infected person. I think this scene is just there to show us a different variation to how far the infections can go. We see this frame that we've seen in the causeway and a bunch of birds just flying around it. In the distance, you can see the almost green in the sky, and it looks like the Aurora Borealis and the stars as well, and it looks so great. I'm obsessed with it. We get a better angle of it later, and you can see that the night sky in fact is a little green. We see Isla with a newborn baby in the bus that the soldier is about to get yanked from, and in the original teaser we saw this infected lift from the flowers in a different point of view. We are all now aware this isn't Cillian Murphy, but it is Angus Neal, and I'm so sorry Angus Neal that people are calling you Cillian Murphy, or maybe you liked it. I would like it. We also get a glimpse of the abandoned houses of the town, and this is the city that we saw at the beginning of the teaser trailer. I think beyond the catastrophe and clear sadness at what's already been forgotten is the fact that for Spike, this is all normal because he's 13 years old. His only life that he's lived is in quarantine and the outbreak. However, Isla hasn't. So this is probably a moment where he's comforting her more than she's comforting him. We see the NATO officers in the tunnel, and I think this is just a scene that's connected to the one that we saw at the beginning earlier. And Lord have mercy, this next shot, money. This is the money shot. I love it. We see Spike on this bridge shooting down at what I can only assume is the infected. This shot is so wonderfully framed. Yeah, I understand it's 90% location, but I'm obsessed with it. Put it on my tombstone. This, I believe, is the Cap and Cock Dam in Eland Valley Village. If this is true, they've now traveled about 5 days from Holy Island. Then we cut to the infected, and this is the infected chasing Spike and Jamie in the water right before they're hit with the flaming arrow. Look at how red those eyes glow. And this is the scene that gets me. So we have a priest talking about a day of judgment. This church I was wrong on, and I am so sorry. It is not a callback to the original movie, but from a church article, the crew wanted to shoot at a church, and the church said absolutely probably not. They documented it for their records and disclosed the scene in this magazine. Did they sign an NDA? Probably not. And they immediately outed out the dirty laundry. They said a 10-year-old boy, Jimmy, running into the church to seek refuge from people who have been infected with the virus. Inside, Jimmy closes the door and sees his father, the vicar, who is at peace in the knowledge that Judgment Day has come. The infected then burst through a window and overwhelm the vicar while Jimmy escapes with the cross. I mean, I understand why they didn't want that shot at a normal church because you're not breaking my windows, but I can't believe that they immediately put it in an article. So I assume this Jimmy that they're referring to is the one that's on the building from the earlier teaser. Additionally, there is a rumor that Jack O'Connell's mystery character is Sir Jimmy Crystal, a leader to a cult who has a dark past. We also saw his name carved into the back of this man hanging upside down. I can see all this stuff connecting and playing out since this Jimmy fellow witnessed his dad die due to Judgment Day, and then he called them his children before being jumped and infected.
This is a glorious day. A day of judgment. My children!
It's insane. This is all crazy, and I'm so excited for this movie. I think one of my favorite parts is how they incorporated children like Spike into this, making it all just normal. I also love that they even recognize that they avoided cities this time. Not only is it easier for production, but the first movie did such a great job venturing through London, they wanted to tackle something else. And also, the characters aren't stupid. The last place you should go is an actual city. I can't wait for this movie. 28 years later drops June 20th, still unrated, but we know what it's gonna be. Come on. Comment down below your thoughts on the new trailer. Be sure to check out nerdride.shop where you can find the latest and greatest and new Rockstars merch. If you're into 28 years later, hey, I got a surprise for you. You're probably into infected stories. Right now, you can grab the Last of Us merch that we got going on, inspired by the HBO series. Episode 1 dropped. I know you're into it. Episode 2 comes out tomorrow, Sunday? You know when. You can grab this awesome motion clicker t-shirt or even a shirt or a tote bag featuring Ellie's tattoo. Plus, there's a ton of other new merch inspired by all your favorite fandoms over there at the site. Go check it out. Go get some new swag. And a special thanks to our YouTube member, Jeremy Dunham, who supports us at the executive producer level. And follow me at Lulu_Clemons. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns, news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Don't get infected. Or do.